In a strange place surrounded by lush forests and distant mountains, there are a lot of people dressed up like adventurers. They are, in fact, adventurers in a tower. They are minding their business when they hear a small voice calling all the humans to pay attention. And when they turn around, they find a talking cat trying to sell them something. The adventurers are surprised to see a wandering merchant cat, and they are smitten by his cuteness. They ask him what he is selling, and the cat shows them a cherry tomato. The humans are not impressed with the product after having high hopes for the cat. They were hoping for something grander, like legendary weapons or mysterious potions. A common cherry tomato was something that they could eat whenever they wanted to. But the cat tells them that they would be foolish if they judged the tomatoes before even appraising them. He claims that the tomato he was selling was nothing extraordinary, and they should check its status window to learn about its special features. The humans are curious, and they look at the status window of the magical cherry tomato. It could increase 0.1 MP for 10 minutes, and it could immediately burn 10 grams of fat when eaten. A man says that the value is too low, but the tomato has already found its target audience. The women are going crazy over a product that can burn 10 grams of fat just by consuming it. The cat smiles smugly and tells them that this tomato would cost them 0.5 tower coins per piece. But he is scared when the women adventurers rush at him, willing to buy all the tomatoes he has for even a higher price. A competition breaks out among them, and everyone wants to have the benefits for themselves. A man asks the cat where he got the tomatoes from, and the cat smiles and tells him that it was a secret. Then we are shown the scene of a field where those cherry tomatoes are being grown. A man picks up a tomato, and it seems like he is packing up for today. He tells his assistant, a rabbit carrying a trolley full of tomatoes, that they have harvested enough tomatoes for the day. The man tells his other workers to take a break too, and we see 2 rabbits trying to harvest another crop. The man then squeezes a tomato into a cup and asks a honeybee to give him some honey. She spits out a big drop of honey, and the man mixes the contents of the cup. His special energy drink is ready, and he drinks it along with his rabbit helpers. The honey and cherry tomato juice is a vitality drink, and the man says that this is how life should be. All his rabbits also raise their tiny glasses to show that they agree with him wholeheartedly. But then he is hit by a sudden quest. He has to distribute the honey and cherry tomato drink to the manager of the tower. There is no reward for the quest, but if he refuses to do it, the penalty would be disappointment. The farmer doesn't want to do it, but when another message pushes him, he agrees to complete the quest later. Just then, the cat merchant comes back to the farm. He calls the farmer Master Sejun and jumps on him. Sejun is also glad to see the cat back and says that he completed the work faster than he expected him to. The cat's name is T, and he tells Sejun that he sold out and earned a lot of tower coins. Sejun is impressed and thinks that it will not be long before he becomes famous in the tower. And when T hears this, he panics because he was keeping Sejun's name a secret. But the money-minded cat is already thinking of going to sell another round of crops after eating, as he wants to earn a lot of money. As T rushes to a black rabbit, asking him to refill his supplies, Sejun asks him to rest for a bit longer. The black rabbit shows exceptional skill at fishing and catches a few fish for T. Sejun watches T and thinks that he is addicted to earning money, but then he suddenly remembers something he had almost forgotten. Sejun takes a piece of charcoal and makes a symbol on a stone wall. The wall is half full of the same letter, and this one was the 30th. Sejun says that it has been 150 days today. He introduces himself as Park Sejun, and his class is a tower farmer. Sejun is going to harvest the crops, and the black rabbit and T jump on his shoulders and say that they will help him too. Sejun thinks back about how he has been in the tower for 150 days since he got lost. He looks at his fields, with different types of crops growing and rabbits and bees helping him out. And then he gets ready to do some work too. He then begins telling the story of how he survived after getting lost in the tower. 10 years ago, on an ordinary day, a 99-story black tower suddenly appeared in the middle of Gangnam. And it was not just in Gangnam but in every corner of the world. A total of 100 towers appeared, and every country started to investigate them. But all anyone could find was the height of the tower, which was 990 meters, and that it was made from a material strong enough to withstand nuclear bomb explosions. But then one day, people started coming out of the tower, walking right through the wall. There was an uproar, and the news reporters surrounded them. They asked the returners how they entered the tower in the first place, and the answer they got was that one day, a black hole appeared in front of them, and they got sucked into the tower. When they opened their eyes, they found themselves on the first floor of the tower. The news gathered everyone's attention, as the same incident was happening all over the world. The people who had gone missing a little while ago were suddenly found coming out of the tower. The following discoveries were made by collecting information from different people who escaped the tower, and they will be made public soon. All 100 towers are connected to one another, and when a person entered the tower, they would find themselves on the first floor. There, they would have to pick one role, either a warrior or a magician. A man is saying this in a press conference. He says that monsters start appearing on the second floor, and every time they clear a floor, they get different rewards. And if they were lucky enough, they would get a ticket like the man has. It was an item, and a rare one at that. People who were sucked into the tower were called the Awakened, and they could enter and exit the tower as they pleased. But if any ordinary person wanted to enter the tower, they would need this ticket. But it did not mean they could also climb up the floors of the tower. The reporters ask him what makes him think that people would volunteer to go into the tower, which had dangerous monsters. And the next question is, what was the purpose of the tower's appearance? The man does not know the answer to the second question, but he is going to tell everyone why one would go to the tower. On his cue, a woman comes forward with a small treasure box in her hand. And when she opens it, a heap of gold and jewels is piled up on the floor. The reporters stand up in shock, and the man on the podium tells them that he is sure of one thing. Going up the tower will give them money. This was all a way to get people interested in entering the tower. The Awakened Association had the monopoly over the tickets, and they were charging a ridiculously high amount of money for them. The news of the ticket prices rising from 150 million to 200 million won is live, and a woman is watching it on her smartphone. She is in a mall shopping for vegetables and starts talking with the cashier. She complains that people were putting their lives on the line to make money in the tower, but it was too much for them to charge $200 million for one ticket. She asks the young cashier if he agrees with her, and he nervously tells her that she is right. He was Sejun, 26 years old, and trying to save money for something special. He calculates his savings and finds that after deducting all his expenses, he had about $12 million to spare. He wonders how he could keep his dream alive if the prices for the tickets increased again. He is walking home after his job, and he asks himself, when will he be able to buy a ticket? But he knows that the better question was if he would ever be able to buy the ticket. He is tired of hustling so hard for money, but then he snaps out of his despair. He shouts at himself to keep his spirit up and not give up. He thinks that there will be some way to save more money. Just then, he thinks of the vegetables he had bought at a low price. He could plant them because he had heard that their price was also increasing. And he had seen an advertisement for an automatic vegetable grower recently. It was endorsed by none other than his favorite idol, Sarah. Sejun starts thinking optimistically, almost too optimistically. He thinks if he saves the money and buys a ticket, he might land a contract with a good guild. And then, if he cleared the tower, he would propose to his celebrity crush, Sarah. Sejun imagines how good that headline would look as he giggles. He cheers himself up, but then he notices something weird happening behind him. Sejun turns back to see a black hole-like portal and recognizes it as the vanishing point. It was the same phenomenon that sucked in the first generation of the Awakened. Sejun is excited. He thinks that the vanishing was here for him. He declares that he is ready to risk his life to climb up the tower and asks the black hole to take him in. But nothing happens. Instead, the hole starts shrinking, and Sejun is shocked, asking why it is getting smaller. But the hole is getting even smaller and is about to vanish. Sejun panics, saying that he will not let an opportunity like this pass him by. If the vanishing would not take him, he would come to it himself. As he says these words, Sejun jumps inside the hole. He lands on his face when he reaches the other side. He picks himself up and wonders if he really made it inside the tower. Sejun excitedly looks up, speaking of all the things he knew were on the first floor. He wanted to see the fancy chandeliers, marble plaza, and shops selling potions and equipment. But there is nothing like that here. Sejun is in a desolate hole somewhere in the wild. It is an underground dome with an opening at its top through which sunlight pours inside. Sejun gets up and looks at his surroundings, having no clue at all about where he was. He cannot believe it and screams in dissatisfaction, asking where the hell he was. And we see that he was somewhere far away from the tower, in the middle of a forest. Inside the top floor of the black tower, a crystal orb is glowing red and beeping. We see the silhouette of a dragon looking at that crystal ball with shock. The ball had detected a change in the tower, and the dragon must find the cause, because that was its duty as the manager of the tower. But neither the dragon nor Sejun have any idea about each other yet. Sejun recalls everything he had heard about the tower's first floor in the interviews with the Awakened. Someone said it was like a very spacious palace, and there were many things that they could buy there. Yet another man said in an interview that the training hall was the most important thing on the first floor. That is what Sejun had heard, but looking at his place, He wonders where he was. A small pond of water, an overhead opening for sunlight, and a cave that surrounded him on all sides. This was all he could see right now. Sejun is defeated by his fate, and he is sitting on a corner, visibly exhausted and utterly devastated. He had roamed the cave for an entire day and found no exit. There was no trading ground or store. In fact, there was nothing here at all. He had screamed for help, and no one heard his call, which meant no one was even around this place. And there is only one possibility that comes to his mind, and it terrifies him. He was lost inside the tower. As he is having a bout of panic, his phone alarm rings. Sejun is sure that his alarm is accurate, and it marked that one whole day had passed here. His stomach growls, and Sejun admits that he was hungry. He takes out all the things he had with him. A bottle of water, some cherry tomatoes, green onions, sweet potatoes, and an apple that was all Sejun had with him, and he decided to eat the apple first. Eating an apple in the morning was something he liked, and the one he just ate is too delicious. But it is not nearly enough, and Sejun eats a sweet potato after it. And the texture, taste, and moistness of the sweet potato were something he was not expecting. It was much better than he expected it to be, even though it was raw. But because he was talking while eating, he choked on the sweet potato and drank water to swallow it. Then he lies down and thinks that it was a good meal. Sejun looks at the open roof of the cave and wonders how long he will stay here. He must find a way to escape before he runs out of food. He looks at the small amount of food he has and wonders how long it will last him. At this rate, he will die of starvation if he is not rescued. But Sejun kicks that thought out of his mind, determined that he will not die like this. It was his dream to get into the tower, and now that he was finally here, he was not going to die right away. He has an idea when he sees the apple core. Sejun takes it and plants it in the soil. Then he takes a green onion and snaps it near the base. He plans to eat the leaves as food and plant the roots to get more crops. He also takes 3 tomatoes and 2 sweet potatoes and plants them. Whatever is left now will be his food till the crops grow. Sejun says that he will do anything it takes to survive. That is, until his crop plants grow up. He addresses them and says that he will wait for them. They are his future. But just then, Sejun hears the scream of a monster that makes his hair stand on end. He is shocked. What he just heard was the sound of a monster. But there were no records of monsters on the first floor. And then everything turns dark, and Sejun looks up to find something even more shocking. The moon has eclipsed the sun, and Sejun knows that it was a blue moon. He hears the deafening scream of the monster again, and his body cannot take the pressure the scream puts on it. And just as the screams stop, Sejun notices a black dragon flying in the sky. He is mesmerized by the black dragon and says that it is beautiful. Then he loses consciousness and goes into a deep slumber. But something strange is happening with his green onions. They start shimmering at the top, and new growth starts. Sejun is woken up by his alarm, and his head is still aching. He looks at his phone to see how long he slept, and he gets startled when he finds that he was unconscious for 2 whole days. Because he slept for 2 days on hard ground, his back is aching, and he is much more tired than before. But as he sits down, complaining that his whole body is hurting, his back gets some support. Sejun turns back to see a plant and wonders where a tree came from. But then he looks at it again and finds that it was a green onion plant, the same one he had planted. All of them had grown, and they were gigantic. Sejun is perplexed. He wonders if green onions could grow this big in just 2 days. He realizes that this unnatural growth must be a property of the tower. He had seen a documentary that taught how the growth of plants was dependent on the environment, and he is sure that the tower's power has affected the green onions. Sejun is hit by the realization that maybe other crops are also ready now. And as he excitedly checks them, he finds that tomato seedlings have also emerged from the ground. He is excited about his plants growing, but then he notices that the green onion plants are blocking sunlight. He decides to cut them off so that his tomato seedlings can also get sunlight. He breaks the green onions a fair bit above their base, and it is a harder task than he thought. Sejun has finished harvesting, and he wonders what the green onion leaf would taste like. He takes a bite and burns his mouth because the leaf was spicier than anything he had tasted before. He splashes his mouth with the water of the pond, complaining that the leaf is much more spicy than the original one. But even though his mouth was scorched, his stomach did not feel the heat. Sejun thinks that he can get used to this, and whenever he needs something spicy, this will be great. He decides to dry the other green onions and save them for later. He goes back to his regular sitting spot, a rock in the center of the cave, and starts eating tomatoes. The sun never set in the tower, but occasionally there were instances where the moon eclipsed it, and this phenomenon was called the blue moon. But the blue moon did not happen until the 10th floor. Sejun believed that he was somewhere on the 1st floor, but now he is not sure. And what was even more confusing was the dragon. It was not an illusion, and Sejun does not know which floor it was found on. When the tower appeared 10 years ago, one of the major guilds, called the Phoenix Guild, cleared the 37th floor. It was an achievement that has not been topped yet. And because of this, the information about floors 30 to 37 was kept secret from the world. But there was plenty of information about the floors below 30. The floors until the 10th floor had skeleton monsters. From 11 to 20, it was goblins. And from 21 to 30, it was orcs. Sejun had heard some rumors about spider monsters being found on floors above 31. But there was no surety of the news. Yet he had never heard anything about a dragon. He had never heard of anything mildly similar to it, not even lizard monsters. Sejun is lying down as he wonders if he is on a floor so high that no one has yet reached it. But then water drops fall on his face, and Sejun gets up. Was it raining in the tower? He had heard that the weather was almost always pleasant. And as he looks up, the sky is clear too. But he spots something moving very fast and gets scared that it is a monster. But the creature he just saw comes forward, and it is a cute rabbit drooling over Sejun's crops. Sejun is surprised and wonders if the rabbit was a monster too. The rabbit jumps down the hole, and Sejun rushes to catch it. But the rabbit uses his head as a stepping stone and lands safely on the ground. He hops to the green onion plants, and Sejun realizes that the rabbit was something extraordinary. The rabbit points at the green onion plants, and Sejun asks if he wants to eat them. The rabbit gives his response, and Sejun understands that he wants to eat. He breaks the leaf of the green onion and gives it to the rabbit, who gladly takes it. He eats it greedily, and Sejun tells him that he could have more if he liked it. And then Sejun notices that the plants have already grown back. At this rate, he will have to harvest them twice daily. But the rabbit starts saying something loudly, and Sejun finds he is not talking to him. He looks above, to the entrance of the cave, and finds another rabbit coming towards them. She lands and hands the first rabbit a straw hat and a watering can, and they both stand in front of Sejun. Sejun is surprised to see another rabbit, but then he thinks that the two are somehow related. He asks the rabbits if they are married, and they tell him that he is right. Sejun starts thinking of keeping a diary of his life in the tower. And on the first page of that diary, there will be the story of a rabbit couple who joined him in the cave. The rabbit couple starts working for Sejun, and their job is to help him raise and harvest the crops. They are chatting with each other as they do their jobs, and Sejun can tell that they are a great couple, even though he does not understand them. But he wonders how it came to this. Yesterday, after the rabbits introduced themselves to Sejun, they told him that they wanted to live in the cave, and they looked too cute as they tried to persuade him. Sejun felt that he might die from a cuteness overdose and accepted their request with a condition. He told the rabbits that they could not live here for free. If they helped him in farming, he would consider letting them stay. He thought it would dissuade the rabbits a bit, but instead of hesitating, they jumped at him and started cuddling. And Sejun had to show great restraint to not let them in without a test, because cuddling with their soft fur made him want to adopt them both. Now he is sitting in his position, watching the rabbits work. He thinks that the rabbits were using their cuteness to control him, but he lets that slide. But on that note, he asks the rabbits if the tools they were using were items. The husband rabbit had a watering can that seemed to have an endless supply of water, and Sejun is not sure about it. But it seemed to him that the wife rabbit had a magic pocket that contained all the tools she needed for farming. Sejun says that he was jealous and wished that he had such a wonderful item. The rabbits have completed harvesting the green onions, and they are excited to show them to Sejun. Sejun tells them to dry the green onions and starts inspecting other crops too. But the rabbits are looking at Sejun with eager and impatient eyes. They are asking him a question, and Sejun understands what they want. He tells them that they passed his test, and now they could live in the cave. The rabbits jump for joy upon hearing the good news and start talking about something. They rush to a corner of the cave, and Sejun wonders what they are up to now. The wife gives her husband a shovel, and he starts digging. And in no time, he creates a home for himself and his wife. The wife places a floral wreath on the door to their new house and welcomes her husband to enter. But he is exhausted from digging and building a house and can barely stand. Sejun approaches them and says that the husband rabbit was great for making a house so quickly. The husband rabbit gives him a thumbs up, but then he feels his wife's hand on his shoulder. She is blushing and cutely pointing at the door, and the husband is terrified. He is scared, but his wife drags him along for some sweet lovemaking. Sejun hears the sounds coming from their house and wishes the husband all the best. But he is crying inside, as he is jealous of him for having a wife. That jealousy does not last long, and Sejun walks back to his spot. He says that it was boring to be alone in the cave, and now, thanks to the rabbits, he had someone to help him and something cute to look for. As he says this, Sejun lies down on the dried onion leaves. Smoke starts rising from under his back, and Sejun feels something hot on his back. He jumps into a standing position and rolls on the ground, feeling that his back is on fire. He is wondering what just happened as he gets up, and he sees the reason behind it. The plastic water bottle filled with water was acting as a lens and burning the dried onion leaves. Inspiration finds Sejun, and he goes into full wild survival mode. He starts acting like the host of a popular survival show. He says that the environment in the tower was hard, but he did not give up. He had a plastic bottle and dried green onions that helped him survive. Coming back to his normal self, Sejun says that he can use the plastic bottle as a convex lens to start a fire. He had learned that from a famous survival show. But it does not work, and Sejun starts to cry and whine. The leaves only gave out a little smoke but did not catch fire. As he sighs, thinking about what he's doing wrong, a small spark lights up, and Sejun has found the missing piece. The rabbits come out of their house and spot Sejun doing something they do not understand. He is blowing wind on the pile of dried leaves, hoping that they catch fire. The rabbits approach him, and Sejun asks them to blow wind on the leaves while he uses the bottle as a lens. They start working together, and Sejun begs for a fire to start. And just after a little while of trying, the leaves catch fire. Sejun is elated. He finally has fire. He looks back at the onion plants and decides to cook them. He cooks one stalk over the fire, and the rabbits stare at him with confusion. Sejun thinks that his onion was cooked enough. He peels the burnt part and then takes a bite. The rabbits see him shuddering, and Sejun lets out a cry of joy. The cooked onion leaf was so sweet that Sejun was overjoyed. He thinks that his mouth felt like a green horse running wild in a green field. He repeats that it is delicious and starts roasting another one. The rabbits are also curious about what difference cooking would make, so they roast one for themselves. And as they eat it, their eyes gleam with the joy of eating something so sweet. This is the second entry in Sejun's diary about staying in the tower. He discovered fire, ate warm food, and went peacefully to bed. Many days have passed, and now Sejun is used to the lifestyle of a farmer. He wakes up in the morning and goes to wash his face at the pond. He returns to his crops, and now the cherry tomato and sweet potato plants have also grown considerably. He has completed harvesting the green onions for the day. Also, he has finished watering the tomato and sweet potato plants. Sejun is now all set for the day, and he feels really good. A lot of things have happened in the past few days. After he discovered fire with the help of rabbits, they made torches out of green onion leaves and put them around the cave. That helped him roam around the cave easily, especially in the dark areas like the pond. He was near the pond with a torch in his hand when he saw something moving in the water. A fish jumped out of the water, and Sejun was so startled that he barely dodged its open mouth. The fish had jumped with too much power and found itself on land, not able to return to the water. This was the first time Sejun had seen it. He wonders if the fish was attracted to the light of the torch, and his intuition is proved correct. And just like that, Sejun discovered fish in the cave. He kills the fish and roasts it over the fire. Even though he has no seasoning, the fish is really tasty. Sejun finds the rabbits drooling as he eats the fish and asking for their share. He is shocked. He had not expected rabbits to be meat eaters. But since they were basically monsters, he thinks it was natural. 2 days after that, the blue moon showed up. And using his phone, Sejun found out that the blue moon appeared every 30 days on this floor. He was using a laptop and a power bank to keep his phone charged so that he could keep track of the date. But their batteries also dried out eventually. So Sejun had no choice but to start marking the number of days on a wall. And this was how he was keeping track of time now. Back in the present, it is the 61st day. And Sejun thanks the rabbits that go to bed exactly at 7 p.m. and wake up at 5 a.m. Because of that, he can keep counting the days without making mistakes. And even though the sun never set inside the tower, their body clock was adequately reliable. And a few days ago, something amazing happened. We see the tired husband rabbit open the door of his house, and without wasting a moment, a group of baby rabbits bolt out. They were the children of the rabbit couple that were recently born. And now they are fond of Sejun, who is their uncle. They run straight at Sejun and jump on him, casting him to the ground. They are really cute, and Sejun cannot get enough of their cuteness. Even as they chomp his face, he laughs and enjoys their company. Sejun looks at the sleep-deprived husband rabbit and says that it must be hard raising babies. But right now, he says that he will take care of the babies for a while, and the couple should relax and eat breakfast. The cherry tomato plants have started flowering, and Sejun takes the baby rabbits with him to check them out. The babies are frolicking around on the farm as Sejun checks out his plants. The flowers had bloomed, and even though they were tomato flowers, Sejun now thinks he has a flower garden. To bear fruit, pollination is necessary, and he has to do it manually. Sejun uses a small stick to artificially pollinate the flowers, but all the bending and working is taking a toll on his back. He says that it would be great if there were bees around here, but thinks that he is asking for too much. A baby puts his face inside a flower and gets pollen on his face. He sneezes, and Sejun starts laughing. But then Sejun notices something. The tomato plants have started to bear fruit. After so long, his hard work is starting to show some results. Sejun celebrates the first fruits of his cherry tomato plants and dances with the baby rabbit. This day is the one before the blue moon, and as it is about to approach, Sejun makes preparations to survive it. He puts out the fire and stores a small amount of burning leaves under huge boulders. He is wearing makeshift clothes made from onion leaves and thinks that it will be enough to stay warm and hidden. The rabbits also head back to their homes as the time for the blue moon draws near. There is something scary that happens whenever the blue moon occurs, and Sejun is confident that they are going to survive it like the previous ones. He thinks it's going to be a piece of cake and goes into hiding. The blue moon starts, and monsters start screeching throughout the forest. Sejun is not afraid, but he is tired and hopes that the blue moon ends soon. To prepare for an unlikely situation, he has already hidden the things with a strong odor and is now hiding in a corner. But since it is hard to tell how much time has passed, he is getting tired of waiting. The monster cries do not help either, they are far away, but they can still make him shiver. As he hopes that this blue moon also passes without incident, he hears a loud roar. It was different and more intense than the voice of other monsters, almost like it was close to him. And indeed, a huge monster was walking towards the cave, squashing full-grown trees beneath its feet. He approaches the entrance to the cave, which is too small in comparison to its size. The monster stares down the hole, and inside, Sejun gapes as he sees it. Now he is scared of the giant bear-like monster in front of him. But thankfully, the monster has not noticed him yet. Sejun thinks he should hide in a better place before the monster spots him. He is trembling as he picks up his bag and starts moving quietly and slowly. But taking the bag with him turns out to be a mistake. The things inside the bag drop as Sejun picks them up, and because of the loud noise created by the empty water bottle, the monster's attention is attracted. Sejun stares in horror, first at his stuff and then up at the beast, who is now trying to peep inside the cave. Sejun screams in fear, and the bear roars in response. But a few moments later, Sejun is sound asleep, and the rabbits are trying to wake him up. When the baby rabbits fail to wake him up, their father slaps Sejun, and he gets up. He gets up in shock, still afraid of what he saw before passing out. He asks the rabbits what happened to the blue moon, and as he looks around, he realizes that it was over. The husband rabbit tells Sejun that he was unconscious when they found him, and he says that he passed away when he saw a monster. But he himself wants to know what happened after that. When he saw the monster trying to force his entry into the cave, he was terrified and could not move. The monster roared, and he passed out. Sejun remembers it and shivers. He almost lost his life at the hands of that monster. He is feeling cold, and the wife rabbit creates a big fire and a blanket of onion leaves. Sejun sits in front of the fire with the baby rabbit snuggled up with him. The wife's rabbit also brings him roasted fish, and Sejun thanks her. As Sejun is eating, he realizes that the monster has noticed this place. It may have been because of another monster or because it could not get inside the cave because of the small entrance. But the monster left without causing harm. But there was no guarantee that if it came the next time, he would stay safe. He thinks that he got lucky this time, but it may go differently next time. After everything he has done to survive, he does not want to die. And he thinks that what he could do right now is eat well and survive. Sejun is eating his fish when the husband rabbit comes to him, wanting to show him something. Sejun follows him and finds something unbelievable. A cherry tomato was ripe, but it was nothing like he had expected. It was blue and glistening in the sunlight. Sejun is shocked, but the blue color is not the first thing he notices about the fruit. He bows down and tries to pick up the big and ripe fruit, and then he wonders why it was blue. He wonders if the tomato is ripe, and just then, something appears in front of him. A window opens up in front of Sejun, and it tells him that he has completed the quest to harvest the fruit containing the energy of the blue moon. Sejun is shocked. He cannot believe that the thing in front of him was an actual message window. The message on the window changes, and now it says that the manager was interested in him because of his amazing achievements. It was keeping a keen eye on Sejun, but it was not happy. Sejun is confused. Why would the tower manager not be happy with him? and the husband rabbit does not know anything that is going on. Sejun is informed that he was not a duly invited guest, and the tower manager has accepted it as a blunder it wants to hide. Sejun is shocked and asks the window what it means. Was it a mistake that he ended up in the tower? He lashes out, saying that after he spent more than 2 months in this place, the tower manager dared to say that it was a mistake. He says that if that were the case, he should be allowed to go home immediately. But the window says that the tower master wanted to kill Sejun to eradicate all proof of this mistake. Sejun is flabbergasted. He screams at the screen, saying that he completed a wonderful achievement, and instead of rewarding him, the manager wanted to kill him. The system window falls silent for a while, and Sejun wonders what was happening. The next message he gets changes his mood from scared and angry to elated. The tower manager is awakening him. Sejun feels an aura surrounding him as soon as the message is displayed. He cannot believe it and confirms with the window that he is officially awake in the tower now. He wants to know his job, and since he thinks that he is smart, he should be a wizard. The tower master is assigning him a job, and Sejun eagerly waits to see which one he will get. And his job is a tower farmer with proficiency of F rank. All the joy and excitement leave Sejun's face, and he goes blank. The windows keep giving him messages about his job. He will never get sick and be close to nature because of his job, and he will get his experience points by harvesting crops. Sejun is shocked. There was no job class other than a warrior, and a magician inside the tower. How could he be a farmer? He commands to open his status window and finds that his talent is ordinary and his stats are all at 1. He stares at his status window, but the only thing he can focus on is his ordinary talent. He thinks of a far-fetched scenario, one of a future where he succeeds in clearing the tower. He is the main guest of a late-night talk show, and the host introduces him as the man who cleared the tower despite having ordinary talent. The host asks the audience to applaud for Sejun and then asks him what his job was. Sejun acts cool, and as he says that he was the tower farmer, everyone finds him attractive. But this imaginary scenario is too pathetic. Even though Sejun has cleared the tower in it, he is still a farmer. He yells out in frustration and tries to smash the blue tomato to the ground, saying he did not need it. But then he looks at the scared and concerned faces of the rabbits and stops. Sejun is taken aback by the influence his actions had on his friends and looks at his farm, then at the tomato in his hand. He was not alone in growing it. Everyone had worked hard to reach this point. Sejun decides that he is going to keep farming, and the rabbits are happy. He looks at the blue tomato in his hand, and an information window opens up, telling him about the tomato. It was a magical cherry tomato, imbued with the power of the blue moon. Not only was it tasty and nutritious, but when consumed, it would increase 0.05 MP permanently. Sejun is shocked. The tomato in his hand was actually an item. Even though the effect was small, it was permanent, and it could boost one's stats. Sejun is amazed by himself. He grew something as great as this. But the tower manager is watching him, and he is not satisfied with how things are going. As Sejun thanks the rabbits and celebrates with them for achieving this feat, a message window pops up in front of him. A quest had been triggered. He had to offer the blue cherry tomato to the manager. The reward for the quest was a job-related skill, and the penalty for refusing was death. Sejun reads the entire message, and when he reads that the penalty was death, he is scared. He asks the window if it wasn't a joke, and if it was in poor taste. Sejun is shocked when he reads that the penalty for refusing the quest is death. In front of him, the window was open, and Sejun could still not believe that something so extreme was happening. He accuses the admin of blackmailing him and using the name of a quest to justify his actions. Sejun tells the admin that if he wants it, he should ask for it properly. If he played dirty games like this and made it look like he was giving Sejun options, that would not be good. Sejun is a bit relieved after venting his anger, but he says that how worthless was his life to the admin if it would kill him just for not giving up one tomato. But even then, the penalty of death cannot make him any braver. He gives up and offers the blue tomato to the administrator, who asks to spare his life. The tomato in Sejun's hands vanishes, and he receives the message that he has completed the quest. The next window has the quest reward, and Sejun is excited to get the reward. He knew it was a job-related skill, but since he was focusing solely on the death penalty, he forgot about it for a moment. Sejun flatters the tower manager and calls him generous. Then he decides to check what kind of skill he has and opens the quest reward. The reward is the skill sowing at level 1. It slightly increases the probability of germination when a seed is planted. Sejun does not understand how to react, but he sure is disappointed. But then he consoles himself by saying that since his job was as a tower farmer, he could not expect much from the reward anyway. He goes to the dark parts of the cave with a torch, and a fish jumps out towards the flame. Sejun uses a club made of green onion stems and leaves to hit it towards the land. The fish dies, and Sejun learns that it was a piranha. He had killed a piranha, and the information window tells him that he got 2 experience points for it. This was the 5th fish Sejun had caught, and with that, he now had 10 experience points. After awakening as a farmer, Sejun was able to collect experience points, and he caught several piranhas every day for several days and reached level 2. He wants to catch more of them, but it is clearly a bad idea. He thinks he should not kill a living thing without reason. Besides, he got valuable protein from the fish. If he killed all of them and their population went extinct, he would not be able to eat them again. Sejun roasts the fish and calls his friends to eat. And the baby rabbits are much more hungry than their parents. They run towards Sejun, who is their human uncle, and he gives them fish and onion leaves. They had grown a little and started eating a lot more compared to before. Sejun asks them to leave some food for their mom and dad as well. There was another benefit Sejun got from awakening. He could get information about the rabbits. He gives them their share, and the rabbits happily take it. They were farmer white rabbits, and Sejun had a few ideas about how they ended up with him. They were a type of monster he had never heard of outside the tower. Based on their name, Sejun realizes that they specialize in farming and not fighting. He thinks that this must be the reason they were not known. The rabbits start flirting as they eat, and as Sejun watches them, he wonders what happened to them. But he assumes that they must have lost their farms, and after wandering for some time, they found this cave and him. He wants to know if the rabbits have a hometown to return to, but he can't understand them, and neither can they understand him beyond basic farming terminology. Sejun tells this to the husband rabbit, saying that he wishes they could understand each other, but he does not understand human speech either and is confused. But now that they are done eating, Sejun says that they should head back to the farm. Today is an important day for all of them, and the husband rabbit is also excited. They reach the farm to find the cherry tomatoes perfectly ripe. Sejun is amazed to see them. They were even better than the tomatoes he brought with him. The rabbits are also pleased to see the red tomato fruits. Sejun gets sentimental as he says that now is the time to harvest them. They had worked so hard to grow them. They had harvested one after the blue moon, but it didn't count. Sejun is nervous as he goes to harvest the first tomato. His hand is trembling, and the rabbits are watching him anxiously too. But Sejun picks up a fruit, which easily separates from the branch. He exclaims that this was his first cherry tomato, and it had ripened so well. The tomatoes bring more good news with them. Sejun sees information windows telling him that he had harvested a well-ripe magical cherry tomato, and he would receive 10 experience points for it. Sejun is surprised to learn that these tomatoes were also magical, just like the blue tomato. He reads their information and finds that, when consumed, this tomato decomposes 10 grams of fat and increases 0.1 MP for 10 minutes. The MP effect could be stacked up to 10 times, and the maximum time limit for that would be 1 hour. Below this information is Sejun's name as the cultivator of the tomato, and it is also mentioned that it was an E-grade item whose shelf life was 30 days. Sejun is impressed that even though the effect of one tomato was quite small, if 10 of them were eaten together, they could boost MP by 1. He wonders if other tomatoes are also the same and sets out to harvest them. He harvests a tomato, and it is also a ripe magical cherry tomato, as is the next one after that. But then he harvests an unripe magical cherry tomato and only gets 7 experience points for it. Sejun is taken aback that he made a mistake, but he still got 7 experience points. And when he harvested an unripe fruit, it was not an item anymore, it was back to being a normal tomato. Sejun now understands that he must take care to harvest only the well-ripe fruits to get them as an item. It is harder than he thinks, but Sejun keeps it up, and his level increases. He is already level 4, and Sejun thinks he has harvested enough crops for the day. He takes a tomato and says that he should have a taste, but the rabbits are stomping their feet aggressively, and Sejun looks at them. They are angry, and he apologizes. Sejun offers the tomatoes to them. They had achieved this together, so they should reap the rewards together too. But the husband rabbit is furious, even as he picks up a tomato. Sejun says that they should celebrate the successful harvest, and everyone should eat. And when Sejun eats the tomato, his mind is blown. He thinks that he is lying on soft green grass, looking up at the clear night sky. And then suddenly, a flare flies into the sky and explodes, a firework. Sejun gets up and looks at it with his mouth open. The fresh scent of grass and the sweet and sour taste of the tomato mix with that scent. Sejun feels that this feeling is similar to the fireworks in the middle of a summer festival. Sejun sheds a tear of joy as he remembers the summer and feels it in the tomato. The wife rabbit asks her husband if he knew what Sejun was saying, and he has no idea. The rabbits take the remaining tomatoes and store them in a makeshift storage facility. They cover the tomatoes with onion leaves, and Sejun is lying down and watching them. He thinks that the rabbit kids are now big enough to help their parents. He is ready to sleep on mattresses and with an eye mask, both made of onion leaves. Sejun says that they were indeed the children of farmers' rabbits. Sejun yawns and says that he should go to sleep now as he is feeling sleepy. And he is sure that when he wakes up tomorrow, another wonderful day will greet him. Sejun lays down and immediately begins to snore. But then a quest is issued for him. He must offer 100 magical cherry tomatoes to the tower manager. The reward was a job-related skill, and the penalty was the same as before, death. But Sejun is really asleep and does not notice the window. But then it suddenly starts ringing loudly like an alarm, and Sejun is forcibly woken up. He offers 100 tomatoes to the manager in frustration, and the manager is satisfied. It gives Sejun the reward for the quest. Sejun says that the manager was forcing him to do things, and he better give him something more useful this time. As he opens the quest reward, Sejun finds that he has received the skill harvest at level 1. It enabled him to obtain harvested crops in optimum condition even if they were slightly overripe or underripe. Sejun is disappointed and asks why he needs a harvesting skill. That is what he thought initially, but it was much more useful than the previous skill. Sejun admits to this as he harvests tomatoes with his husband's rabbit. Whenever he harvests slightly overripe or underripe tomatoes, an effect activates, and they are perfected to their optimum condition. As he does that, the proficiency of the harvest skill increases along with Sejun's experience points. He says that since he did not have to wait for the cherry tomatoes to ripen, it was easier and faster for him. They have finished harvesting, and Sejun tells the husband rabbit that they should take the rest of the harvest home. But just then, he gets another quest. Sejun was also anticipating it, but he was not expecting the quest to have no reward. Sejun calls the manager a thief for giving no reward. But since his last reward helped him significantly, Sejun can give him at least that much. As he offered the tomatoes to the manager, the husband was shocked. But Sejun did not know that he was entering a vicious cycle. The manager issued the quests again and again, but they kept increasing in demand. It was getting greedier without an end in sight. The required number of tomatoes keeps on increasing, and finally the manager reaches new heights of shamelessness. A new quest is triggered, and Sejun has to offer 500 tomatoes to the manager for no reward. And yet, the penalty for refusing is death. Sejun is really flipped now, and he clearly refuses to comply, and the manager of the tower is surprised. This was yet another entry in Sejun's diary about getting lost in the tower. This was the first time he stood up to the greedy manager. But after calmly refusing, Sejun throws a tantrum. He says that the manager had already taken hundreds of tomatoes. The manager had already taken hundreds of tomatoes. He needed to eat too, and so did the rabbits. But the tower manager replies that it was the farmer's problem and not his. He tells Sejun to stop protesting and give him the cherry tomatoes. But this irritates Sejun even more. He says that he worked hard for days and suffered a lot to harvest those tomatoes. The tower master still insists that Sejun's job was as simple as sowing the seeds. It asks him not to overreact over something that is not a big deal. And this is where the tower manager crosses the line. Sejun says that he is not giving anything to the manager because he doesn't want to. The tower manager is flustered, but Sejun ignores his messages. He keeps on harvesting onions as the manager asks if he really wants to refuse. It says that Sejun could die, but the latter is busy cooking fish. And even when it emphasizes death, Sejun replies that he was not going to give his crops to someone who didn't value his hard work. But the tower manager says that it was Sejun's job, and since the manager was his superior, he should listen to his orders. Sejun replies that this was the reason he was not giving the tomatoes. The manager forcibly made him do this and did not even appreciate his efforts. Moreover, the compensation for the exploitation was also too low. And since it was the manager of the tower, this proved that it was a bad employer. Sejun's words and the hurt in his eyes shocked the tower manager. It had not realized this before and tried to apologize. But Sejun is eating the tomatoes while teasing them, and the manager gets angry. It tells Sejun that it was angry because he ate the tomatoes himself. The manager threatens to kill Sejun on the spot if he doesn't complete the request. But Sejun acts like the manager is no big deal and gives him just 5 tomatoes. He says that he will give the rest later since he needs them to feed the kids too. Behind him, 2 baby rabbits are fighting for a tomato as their father tries to calm them. The tomato vanishes, and the tower manager says that it will compromise this time. Sejun thanks him, and the message window vanishes. He laughs to himself, realizing that the manager was about to say sorry just now. But then he says out loud that the tower manager was simpler than he thought. It is now the 91st day, and the 4th blue moon event happens. Sejun is sitting in a dark corner, eating the cherry tomatoes. He had heard that people with high MP could endure the roars of monsters to a certain level, and that is why he was eating the tomatoes, but he still hopes that nothing like the last time happens again. As Sejun wishes for time to pass quickly, his plants begin to gleam in the blue light. Sejun realizes what is going on as the energy of the light enters a tomato, and it turns blue. Sejun cannot wait to harvest it, but then he notices that the tomato plants are not the only ones getting blessed. Even the sweet potato leaves were getting illuminated. The desire to check on them overcomes Sejun, and he walks towards his farm. He digs out the sweet potatoes with his bare hands and is amazed at the result. He had a blue sweet potato in his hand. It was filled with the energy of the blue moon, and when consumed, it would increase one's strength by 0.5 points permanently. The system windows tell him that he harvested a sweet potato with the energy of the blue moon, due to which he gained a lot of experience. The proficiency of the skill harvest has also increased, and now it will be leveled up. Sejun then looks at the blue tomato and harvests it too. As he holds the sweet potato in one hand and the tomato in the other, Sejun thinks that he is holding the world in his hands. But that happiness is soon disturbed by a quest Sejun was expecting. And there were not one but 2 quests. Sejun had to offer both the products imbued with the energy of the blue moon to the manager. There was no reward for either of the quests, and the penalty was death. Sejun thinks that the manager was really pushing it with 2 quests at a time. If Sejun refused, it might just kill him this time. But Sejun has a way to solve this issue. He offers 500 tomatoes to the manager, saying that he needs to complete the previous quest first. The manager quickly accepts the tomatoes and says that he is happy with the cherry tomatoes. But then it asks Sejun why he has not given the energy-filled crops to it already. Sejun apologizes for calling the manager simple earlier. He asks them to let this slide for today and promises to give them it later. The manager sighs and accepts this condition. Sejun then looks at the items in his hands and wonders what he should do with them. And that is not even a question. He tosses the blue tomato in his mouth and shudders. He could feel the summer festival and the fireworks in his mouth again, almost as if it were the first time he ate the tomatoes. The system window tells him that his MP has permanently increased by 0.5 due to eating the tomato. But then Sejun cannot hold on to his hunger and desire any longer. He wraps the sweet potato in onion leaves and throws it into the fire. He thinks it would be even better if he had tin foil with him. But the multi-purpose onion leaves were also good enough. Sejun is happy and says that the time spent waiting for delicious food is the happiest time. The blue moon passes, and the rabbits also come out. And they all have questions for Sejun as they see him cooking something. He says that they had great timing. He was just about to call them. Sejun then excitedly says that he presents to them the sweet potato with the energy of the blue moon, and its delicious smell makes the rabbits drool. Sejun says that it was not much, but they should share it. But the husband rabbit stands in front of his family and stops them from taking up Sejun's offer. They are saddened as he tells them something, and Sejun realizes what the rabbit was saying. He wanted Sejun to eat the sweet potato himself, as there was only one. Sejun is touched and thanks the husband rabbit for being the only one thinking about him. But even as Sejun accepts to eat the sweet potato alone, he is hiding the fact that he has already eaten it secretly before. Sejun peels the sweet potato and takes a bite. But it is too hot, and he burns his tongue and spits out whatever he just bit in the sweet potato in his hand. As Sejun screams about burning his tongue and scalding his palate, the rabbits are watching the sweet potato on the ground. The husband rabbit reaches down to grab a piece of the sweet potato, but his children swipe everything before him, and then they eat it as their father watches. But it is too hot for them, and they too spit it out. The baby rabbits start crying, and the husband is dejected that he got nothing and that the sweet potato got wasted. And this is another entry in Sejun's diary in the tower. He ate a fiery meal today, a little too hot for his liking. A few days later, Sejun is telling the baby rabbits that they are going to plant sweet potato sprouts from now on. The rabbits are confused, and Sejun says that it was the thing they were eating right now. Sejun scolds them and says that the baby rabbits are prohibited from eating the sweet potato sprouts for the time being. These words come as a devastating shock to the rabbits. The sweet potato sprouts have been the favorite snacks of the baby rabbits lately, and now they are trying to protest against Sejun's decision. All of them have different reactions to the order, and Sejun says that no matter how they complain, his decision is final. He thinks that there will be nothing left to plant if the babies keep on eating the sprouts. Sejun tries to convince the rabbits by saying that they will be having even better sweet potatoes for dinner. But if they helped him plant the sweet potato sprouts before that, he would give them a special snack. Sejun had decided to expand the farm area to cultivate sweet potatoes, and for that, he needed the baby rabbits to cooperate with him. And as soon as he tells them about the special snacks, they look at him with drooling mouths and gleaming eyes. Sejun tells them to start working, and the rabbits carry the sprouts to plant them. Their mother is harvesting the green onions, and Sejun asks her to leave one plant. It would then bloom a flower, and Sejun could get seeds from it. He had reached the conclusion that he needed to plant a seed for something to become an item. After all, he had harvested green onions many times, but there was not a single one that was special. In the newly expanded farm area, the baby rabbits are hard at work. One of them digs holes, and the other plants the sprouts in them. But in a corner, one of the babies is too greedy to part with his favorite snack. He cannot control his urge and takes a bite of the leaf. Reacting to that, his father smacks him for doing something like that. Sejun is also harvesting the tomatoes, and he gets a lot of messages from the tower system. He had a little bit of experience, but it was the final bit he needed to level up. And now that he had reached a designated level, he had ranked up from an F-rank farmer to an E-rank farmer. His job level has increased, and his job characteristics will be strengthened because of this. Sejun is also glad to know that he has reached level 8, and to celebrate that, he decides to make the snacks a bit earlier. He takes the cherry tomatoes and puts them on a skewer. At the same time, he gets a message from the tower manager. The manager was keeping an eye on Sejun and what he was going to cook today. The message disappears soon, and Sejun thinks that this was quite a harmless action. He begins roasting the cherry tomatoes and then calls the rabbits to start eating. They leave their work and come running to him, and Sejun presents them with special roasted cherry tomatoes on bone skewers. The information window for the roasted tomatoes also opens. The skewer used by Sejun was made from cleaned piranha bones, and because of the cooking, the tomatoes were softer and sweeter. The rabbits take a skewer each, and they look really excited to eat it. Sejun tells them that it is easy to carry around and eat in this form, but he also warns them that it was quite hot and they should blow before eating it. But the rabbits are already enjoying it. Then he says that since the sweet potato sprouts were already planted, they should dig some sweet potatoes for dinner. As Sejun digs the sweet potatoes, he finds 5 sweet potatoes in a plant. He reads the information about them, and they are called strength sweet potatoes. It had similar effects to the magical tomato, but with strength. Anyone who ate it would get an additional 0.1 strength for 10 minutes, and this effect could be stacked up to 10 times in an hour. The other effect was that it would break down 10 grams of fat and help with bowel movements. And this bonus would also apply to those who had not awakened yet. Sejun counts that he now has 15 sweet potatoes, which means he got 5 potatoes for each one he sowed. And that was pretty good for a first harvest. But then Sejun spots a fallen potato sprout. He plants it, thinking it would be a waste to leave even a single sprout. But then he gets messages from the system saying that the proficiency of skill sowing is increasing because of this action. Now Sejun realizes that even this qualifies as sowing. And he also realizes that he must plant all the sprouts himself to increase his skill level. Sejun asks the baby rabbits to stop in a hurry because now he wants to do it. Inside its office, the manager is trying to copy what Sejun just did. It has cherry tomatoes on a skewer, and they are roasted over a fire. The manager eats the tomatoes and immediately spits some of them out since they are burned and bitter. But then it ponders what was wrong with its tomatoes. The humans seem to eat them fondly. And then the sweet taste of the tomatoes spreads through its mouth, and the manager realizes how delicious they are now. It uses the magic crystal ball to see what Sejun is doing right now. And when the manager finds him eating the sweet potatoes with the rabbits, he gets angry. It screams, saying, "How could those punks start eating sweet potatoes without it?" It was the great black dragon, Alien Fritten. The manager sends a quest to Sejun immediately. He demands 1 roasted sweet potato. There are no rewards for this quest, and the punishment for refusing is death. Sejun is not in a mood to do the quest and tells the manager to postpone it. The manager is shocked and says that he wants the sweet potatoes right now. If Sejun did not give them it, there would be consequences. Sejun says that there was only 1 sweet potato left. He asks the manager what it could offer in reward. The manager considers it for a while and then revises the quest. A reward is added for another job-related skill. Sejun thinks that this reward is good enough and offers the sweet potato to the manager. He opens the reward and finds that it is a level 1 seed store. When this skill was activated, Sejun could buy a product at the seed shop every 30 days. Sejun is overjoyed. A seed store meant that he could purchase things inside a tower that were similar to what other awakened had. He says that this was an amazing reward, and the tower manager should have given it to him earlier. Sejun activates the skill, and the seed store is opened. Before that, it checks the transaction history of Sejun and finds that there were no previous transactions. But thinking about the transactions, Sejun arrives at an important question. How should he make purchases when he has no money? But then he gets another message that the store will offer entry-level services to the customer, Sejun. He was the first rookie-tier customer at the seed store, and because of that, he would get 1 tower coin that would be added to his account at the seed store. The tower coin appears in front of Sejun, and he is shocked. He says that the seed store was the kindest and the best. The tower coin was a currency used inside the tower, but in the outside world, the cost of each tower coin was 1 million won. Sejun opens the seed store to see what he can buy there. The message window tells him that for rookie tier, he could see 3 random types of seeds, and at his current level, Sejun could only purchase 1 of them. The 3 types of seeds for this time are shown, and Sejun sees that he can buy 1,000 seeds of either red pepper, cabbage, or carrots for 0.1 tower coin each. Sejun thinks that the name seed store was quite fitting as it only had seeds. But then he looks at the price and thinks about the outside world's value of the tower coin. He was getting 1,000 seeds for 100,000 won, and that was very expensive. Sejun thinks about what he should choose. Red pepper and cabbage could be a good combo to make kimchi, but he could not buy them together. Neither did he have the resources to process them here. And then the only thing left was carrots. As soon as he says carrots, the attention of all the rabbits turns to Sejun. Sejun asks them what is wrong, and the rabbits try to tell him that they want carrots. Sejun sees their excited expression and says carrots again, getting the same reaction as before. He is enjoying this a bit too much, and the husband rabbit kicks him in the face for wasting time. Sejun purchases the carrot seeds for 0.1 tower coin and gets 1 seed store mile. The mileage could be used to raise the level of his seed store, and he needed 100 points to get to the next level. Sejun gets the seeds in a fancy pouch and thinks that the pouch is more expensive than the seeds themselves. But then he sees a message from the manager saying that he is satisfied with Sejun's purchase. Sejun makes a face and asks why it's getting satisfied. This is another entry in his diary now. He got carrot seeds by trading at the seed store. Sejun is excited to plant carrots, and so are the rabbits, but someone else is watching them from a distance. A large and cute bee is watching Sejun, and the rabbits celebrate getting carrot seeds, and it seems like the bee also wants in. This chapter starts with the husband rabbit and wife rabbit laying on their bellies in front of mounds of soil. They are excitedly chatting about something as their children frolic around behind them, and Sejun watches them from his regular spot too. The rabbits start flirting with each other, and Sejun wonders what has gotten into them recently. He had planted carrot seeds on a patch of land a few days ago, and even though the seeds had not even sprouted yet, the rabbit couple was acting like this in front of the place where he planted carrot seeds. Sejun wonders if they love carrots so much that they spend most of their time daydreaming about them. But he decides to leave them to themselves and take a nap himself. After he wakes up, Sejun plans to pollinate the flowers and cut the green onions. Sejun closes his eye, and a baby rabbit also sleeps with him. But then he notices a buzzing sound whizzing past his ear. Sejun tries to swat away whatever is bothering him without losing sleep. But since nothing changes, he gets up. He is frustrated and says, why did a bug suddenly show up now? But when he looks at the cause of the buzzing noise, he finds it to be a giant and cute bee. The bee looks at Sejun curiously, and he stammers for a while before saying she was so cute. He thinks this is a monster in the form of a bug. He calls the bee close so that he can read what kind of monster she is. But that happiness at meeting a cute thing vanishes when Sejun finds that it was a poison honeybee. He is scared and flinches as he reads the name, and he turns back to ask the rabbits if they knew whether the bee was dangerous or not. But the rabbit couple is already taking their children back to their burrow. They are scared of the bee too, and Sejun is stunned as he watches them run. He screams at the rabbits, calling them mean. His face twists as he asks them how they could leave him alone like this. The remaining information is given by the tower manager, who tells Sejun that the poison honeybees were carnivores that hunted monsters with their poison stings. The bee stingers were very dangerous, and the manager advised Sejun to stay away from them. Sejun is scared after reading that the bees eat meat. He thinks that they cease to be honeybees at this point. The bee flies towards him, and Sejun tries to shoo it away without any result. He says that he was just bones and had no meat for her to eat. He asks the bee to spare him, but she is still moving towards him, and Sejun sees her as a fearsome monster. He is fumbling around with his other hand when he finds something he can use to fend off the bee. It is just a broken tomato branch with a flower, and Sejun swings it towards the bee. He asks her to eat it instead of him. The bee curiously looks at the tomato flower, and Sejun is still afraid of her as she moves towards the flower. But when he opens his eyes, he finds that the bee was actually feeding on the flower. Sejun is shocked, but then the bee smiles at him after feeding. Sejun asks the tower manager if he is sure that the bees are carnivores, and there is no reply from the manager. But then Sejun remembers something very basic: bees love nectar. He approaches the honeybee and tells her that if she was hungry, she could feed on other flowers as well. Sejun tells her to eat to her heart's content, and the poison honeybee flies to the flowers happily. Sejun smiles at himself. While he was initially scared, he found something good after all. At this rate, he will not have to artificially pollinate the cherry tomatoes anymore. Then he spots the rabbit family hiding behind his rock. Sejun gives them a scornful glance and says that they ran away because they were worried only about themselves. And he asks them how they still had the nerve to come back. The rabbits try to soothe Sejun's anger by clinging to him and acting cute. And he says that he will not stop being mad at them. But then the poison honeybee returns after feeding. She flies straight towards Sejun, and he takes a few steps back until he is forced to stop by his rock. He asks the bee if she is not full yet, and as she comes close, Sejun is worried about his safety. But the bee lands on his stomach, and after adjusting his t-shirt a bit and stretching, she lays down in her sleeping position. Sejun also realizes that the bee did not mean to harm or scare him, she just wanted to sleep. And he feels that she was too cute, even while sleeping. But a small part of his mind is still anxious, and Sejun asks the bee that she isn't going to sting him. And this time, the rabbits have also not run away. Sejun has another chapter to add to his diary about getting lost in the tower. His family in the dungeon gained one more member today. A few weeks have passed since Sejun's first meeting with the bee, and the tomato crops are ready to be harvested again. The wall where Sejun was marking the number of days is also showing 24 characters. Each character meant 5 days, and that means he has been here for 120 days. We see Sejun harvesting tomatoes along with the wife rabbit while the husband rabbit is watering the carrot seedlings, and the baby rabbits are still playing around. Sejun is getting disturbed by the baby rabbits playing near him, and he scolds them and tells them to go somewhere else. The baby rabbits run away without a care. And then Sejun looks at the rest of their siblings. They were also busy playing with each other, and he felt good seeing them so carefree. He says that they were having a great time. And of course, they had to play around when they were still young. And then the poison honeybee also comes to him and sits on his shoulder. Sejun asks her if she has sucked all the nectar for today as she lands. Sejun remembers that several weeks have passed since the poison honeybee came here and became a member of their family. He tells her that it is going to be lunchtime soon. And the bee is also excited about it as she rubs her cheek against Sejun's cheek. Sejun says that the routine of the poison honeybee was fixed. She goes to work in the field in the morning, and that is also when she sucks nectar. And then, in the evening, she returned to the forest outside the cave. And thanks to her, Sejun's workload had decreased. Sejun calls the rabbits, saying that it is time to eat. And they all come running towards him. Sejun thinks that the poison honeybee was probably not going back to her group or her hive. Maybe she did not have a hive. As they are eating, Sejun is holding a roasted green onion stem, and the honeybee is sitting on it. She had started spitting honey a few days ago, and right now, she was doing the same. The honey spreads over the roasted onion stem, creating another dish called honey onion. The sweet flavor of the freshly roasted green onion was enhanced by the sticky and sweet honey of the poison honeybee. And Sejun is the one who knows the truth about the statement. He takes a bite of the honey onion and exclaims that it is sweet and delicious. And the rabbits also share the sentiment because they are also eating the honey onion. Sejun talks to the honeybee and tells her that he was scared of her at first. He thought that she was poisonous and hence dangerous. But thanks to her, he was able to quickly get honey. And he also expanded his field with her help. As Sejun enjoys the honey onion, he says that in a few months, he will eat so much honey that it will match what bears in the wild do. He used to be jealous of bears for eating too much honey, but that would stop happening in a few months. The Tower Master also gives Sejun a message, saying that it is happy for him. But he does it where Sejun cannot see it immediately. And as Sejun turns to see the message from the Tower Master, it disappears. A few more days have passed, and Sejun thinks that the blue moon is also going to come soon. He is reading the characters on the stone wall while the baby rabbits are playing and eating. Sejun is worried a bit about the blue moon. Even though nothing bad had happened yet, there were chances that things might go wrong at any time. He hopes that the blue moon goes safely this time as well. It is the 121st day after getting lost, and it is also the day of the blue moon that occurs every 30 days. Sejun is carrying a bag made of onion leaves and full of cherry tomatoes. He puts them inside their usual food hiding place, a rock circle covered with green onion leaves. Sejun is also wearing a jacket made of green onion leaves, and he says this much food will be enough. The poison honeybee had also not come to their farm for a couple of days, and Sejun thinks that she was also preparing for the blue moon somewhere. But then he sees the rabbit family. The husband rabbit and wife rabbit were trying to tell their children something, and their children were listening quite attentively. Sejun also notices that the rabbits were especially anxious today. But it is almost time for the blue moon, and Sejun asks them to go home now. But he stops mid-sentence as he sees the rabbit family huddle up. Sejun cannot think of anything that would make them behave so seriously. But the rabbits do not appear worried or scared either. Sejun is about to ask the rabbits if everything is alright when the rabbit couple bolts towards their home, leaving their kids behind. They go inside their house, and Sejun is shocked at what they are doing. But then the rabbit couple turns back and waves at their children. They also say something, but Sejun does not understand it. And with that, they slam their door shut. Sejun is shocked at what he just witnessed. He asks the parent rabbits how they could just leave their babies out in the open during a blue moon. It was dangerous, and they were still kids who could not fend for themselves. But as Sejun says that the blue moon is coming, it arrives. The moon eclipses the sun, and blue light covers the world. And Sejun hears the roar of a monster coming from behind his back, and he goes speechless. He nervously turns back to see what was happening and sees a sight he will never forget. There is even more noise and even louder roars and growls, and they were coming from the baby rabbits, and they looked nothing like their cute selves now. Right now, they were ferocious monsters who seemed to have lost their reason. Sejun silently watches the baby rabbits, who have suddenly transformed into something monstrous. They had grown in size, their fur had turned white and their eyes red, and they had sharp claws and fangs. And as the baby rabbits roar, Sejun wonders what in the world is going on here.